Before we get started, I just wanted to share a quick disclaimer. This podcast is based on my personal experiences and what I've lived through. Some episodes include difficult topics like trauma and abuse that may be triggering for some listeners. If you need support, I've included resources in the episode description. All stories are shared from my perspective, and names, identities, and specific details have been changed or removed to protect the privacy of those involved. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. My goal is to help others feel seen, raise awareness, and remind anyone listening that they are not alone.
Hey, it's me. If you ever looked in the mirror and barely recognized the face staring back at you, if you've ever seen someone who looks drained, unsure, and worn down from fighting battles nobody else can see, this episode is for you. Today we're going to go into a truth that most people never talk about. The kind of abuse that doesn't show up on x-rays. The kind that won't get documented in a police report. The kind that destroys you from the inside out while the world keeps telling you everything looks fine. If I had to explain what emotional or narcissistic abuse feels like, I'd say it feels like carbon monoxide poisoning. Think about that for a second. Carbon monoxide is the silent killer. You can't smell it. You can't see it. There isn't some loud warning telling you to run. You don't realize that your body is shutting down until the damage is already deep inside you. And that's exactly how this kind of abuse works. There's no explosion, no chaos you can point at, and no obvious sign that tells you that this is the moment that everything changed. It creeps in quietly, it blends with affection, and it hides behind all the small moments that feel normal. Because there's no visible bruises or broken bones, and people just assume it isn't real. But the impact is real. The destruction, it's fucking catastrophic. So before we go further, I want to pause for a second and I want to give an additional trigger warning. In this episode, I'll be speaking honestly about emotional, psychological, and physical abuse, as well as the ways trauma can lead to mental health struggles and addiction afterwards. If you're in a vulnerable place right now, or if you need support, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. You do not have to go through this alone. So we're going to go back to when I was 20 years old and I started dating a guy, and to me, the situation as it unfolded, it wasn't abusive until it was. And I didn't think I should leave, and I didn't know I should. Most of the time, he wasn't cruel, he wasn't controlling in any way. He wasn't anything that fit the picture of what I thought abuse looked like. Most of the time, he was the person that I loved. We laughed, we were comfortable, we were happy, and it felt real. But when he drank, something in him changed. And it was like watching a light go out behind his eyes. The warmth disappeared. It was replaced by something sharp and unpredictable. He would go from calm to dangerous in seconds. And you never knew which version you were going to get. the first time he hit me, it didn't build up. There wasn't a screaming match. We weren't even fighting. There wasn't a warning. 1 minute we were just us, happy and laughing, and the next, his hand was connected to my face. And I remember the sound before I even felt the pain. It was like a jolt and a crack, and my brain was trying to catch up to reality of what just happened. And he cried after I didn't cry. I was in shock. I didn't even understand or couldn't comprehend what even just happened. And he blamed the alcohol and promised it would never happen again. And I stayed. I never left. Not because I was weak, but because I didn't understand what just happened. I told myself it was a one-time thing. I told myself I could handle it. And I told myself he didn't mean it. I was only 20, and I just, from going 1 minute being so happy and in love, laughing, to having his hand connected to my face, I couldn't understand it. It had to have been a mistake. But I didn't realize I was already training myself to minimize it, to justify it, and to bury every instinct that tried to warn me. And that's how you get trapped without seeing the trap. Not because you think it's love, but because it just doesn't fit the definition of the abuse that you've been taught to fear. You keep thinking the good days count for more than the bad ones. And because it's so great, most of the time you just hope it'll never happen again until it does. And for me, then came the night that everything changed. Again, it didn't start with chaos. It started with quiet, but it was like a suffocating stillness, and it always made my skin tighten because the air would feel like heavy and thick. You could cut the tension that was invisible with a knife. It was almost like everything in the house was bracing for something. And deep down, I started to learn. I already knew something was coming. You feel it in your bones before you could even figure it out. And I kept telling myself the same lines that I always used every time. Whenever I felt like this energy shift, I would just in my head repeating the same things. Just stay calm. Maybe it'll pass. Maybe it'll blow over. Maybe this time it'll be different. But alcohol does not care about your calm. It does not negotiate. And the argument that started this night, it wasn't even an argument. It was nothing. It was small. It was forgettable. It was the kind of thing like a healthy couple would move through in less than 5 minutes. But for me, in this situation, this time, it snapped. And the moment it snapped, everything inside my body knew I was not safe. Time, it slowed in this strange way. Everything is going wrong. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it in my face. I could feel it underneath my eyes. My breath it was like getting stuck in my throat, and my body, it went cold, as if I felt the blood just rush to my feet. The only way I could really explain it is in this quick moment, I remember trying to step out of my own mind. I was trying to float above myself to survive what was happening. But then came silence, not peace. It was a thick, vibrating silence that it feels like the air itself is holding a knife. I don't really remember every second clearly, and trauma erases things for a reason, but I do remember the floor. I remember how cold it was, how hard it was, how close my face was to it. I remember the metallic taste in my mouth from the blood and the sound of my own breath. I remember trying to move and feeling pain pulse through my cheek and my scalp, my ribs, and how the room spun when I tried to lift my head. I remember realizing that my hair was stuck to something, glass, blood, both. I couldn't figure it out in the moment. And I still could feel it when I think of it. I remember the sting in my scalp where the hair had been ripped out and glass tangled in what was left. And I remember my vision cleared enough to understand where I was. And it was in that moment that the truth hit me harder than his hands ever did. I could have died on that floor. And I remember thinking, if I stay, I will die. This is how women die. This is how their names end up in articles. This is how someone's daughter does not make it home. And you'd think in that moment like that, it would make you run. And people love to believe that. People love to say, if it were me, I would have left right then. But trust me, you don't understand what terror actually does to your body. And you don't understand that sometimes survival looks like stillness. Sometimes survival looks like waiting. Because I didn't leave that night. Not because I didn't know how bad it was, because I knew. My body knew. My face knew. Every fucking inch of me knew. But I was more terrified to leave than I was to stay. Leaving felt like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline at that point. Leaving felt like the thing that would finally push him over the edge and he might actually kill me. And I've been down that road before. I'd already learned that sometimes the people you run to for help, they don't protect you. Sometimes they hand you right back into the danger you're trying to escape. Sometimes leaving isn't the safe option everyone thinks it is. So I stayed. Not because I wanted to, not because I forgave him, not because any part of me believed it was safe. I stayed because I was too scared of what he would do if I tried to go. And my body was shaking so badly I could barely stand. I couldn't think straight. Every breath hurt. And all I could feel was this low, vibrating terror in my chest. So I did what so many people don't understand. I survived the only way I could. I stayed quiet, I stayed still, and I waited for the danger to pass. And the truth is, that decision wasn't weakness. It was instinct. Raw human instinct. The instinct to live long enough to figure out what to do next. And even now, all of these years later, I can still feel the way that fear paralyzed me that night. The way my body wouldn't let me move. The way the walls felt so close and the air so thin. And the way my brain kept whispering, don't do anything that could make him snap. Don't breathe wrong. Don't stand too fast. Don't look at him in the eyes. People will never understand that unless they've lived it. I didn't leave that night, but that night is when something in me broke. Something I couldn't unsee or ever unfeel ever again. And eventually I did leave. And people think that once you leave, it's just over. They think getting out is the finish line. The freedom magically appears the moment you shut the door behind you. But leaving did not feel like freedom, for me anyways. It felt like a collapse. My legs were shaky, my mind was foggy. Everything inside me felt disconnected. I was out, but I didn't feel free. I felt fucking emptied, numb, barely holding on, but I was alive. And in that moment, alive, it had to be enough for me. The real fight started afterwards. The nights were the worst. I couldn't sleep in the dark. Every sound jolted through my body like it was like an electric shock. A door closing, a car driving past, footsteps in the other room. My whole system, it was just on high alert, like danger was still inside the walls I was staying in. Looking in the mirror, it made me flinch. The bruises faded slowly, but the empty look in my eyes, it stayed. I could look at my own reflection and feel nothing. That scared me more than anything that he ever did, because it felt like the version of me I used to be, it was scraped out of me. And everyone else wanted the inspirational version of the story, the strong girl, the survivor, the fighter, the version that made them comfortable. They didn't want the truth. And the truth was, I cried every time I saw my reflection. The truth was, the inside of me felt hollow. The truth was, leaving didn't magically heal anything at all. It only removed me from the immediate danger, but the damage stayed, the fear stayed, the confusion stayed. It was still living inside me long after he wasn't near me. I didn't know how to cope with any of it. I didn't know how to sleep without drinking. I didn't know how to be in my own body without feeling like I was going to shatter. So I started drinking more. Not to party, not to be wild, not to have fun. I drank to quiet everything that wouldn't stop screaming inside of me. And the truth is, I didn't even understand why I was drinking like I was at the time. I was only 22. I didn't have the language for trauma. I didn't have the understanding. All I knew was that being sober meant feeling everything I was trying to outrun. So I had a drink to fall asleep. I had 2 to quiet the flashbacks, 3 to make my mind stop spinning. I wasn't chasing fun. I was chasing quiet. I just wanted silence in my own head. But people didn't see that. They saw a girl who drank too much, the emotional one or the reactive one, the one who looked like she was falling apart for no reason, or the wild party girl. Nobody connected it to what I had survived. Nobody saw trauma. They just saw the aftershocks and blamed me for the mess. And when people said it couldn't have been that bad, or what I heard was they still just don't believe what I'm saying. And those words, they hit harder than any bruise I ever had. That kind of invalidation slices into places you didn't even know were still open or didn't even know could cut that deep. And eventually, the worst part happened. I started doubting myself. I started replaying everything at night, wondering if maybe I exaggerated it or wondering if maybe they were right. I wondered if maybe it wasn't as serious as I remembered. And nobody warned you that the gaslighting doesn't end when the abuse does, because you keep doing it to yourself because the world makes you question your own reality. The destruction didn't stop when I left him. It kept unfolding. It kept rewiring parts of me I didn't know how to fix. It left me standing in the wreckage of myself, trying to breathe while the world blamed me for the smoke. The worst part was believing nobody would ever really understand what it does to a person. And leaving that first relationship, it didn't mean I suddenly landed in another abusive one, because life, it didn't move like that for me. A whole decade happened in between. I left that relationship in December of 2011, and for a long time, I truly believed I was fine. I didn't really understand why I drank the way I did and what I was trying to outrun. I thought things would eventually be normal. I didn't understand trauma back then. I didn't know that the fear and the shock and the self-doubt were still living in my nervous system, shaping me in ways I didn't even see. I was only 22 and I just wanted to move forward. So I did what most people do. I pushed it all down and I tried to build a life. And I did. I lived. I got married. I had kids. I built routines and stability. I tried to convince myself that what happened in my early 20s was just a dark chapter I'd never have to revisit. I didn't realize how much I was still carrying. I didn't realize how unresolved trauma shows up in your choices, in your reactions, in the way you protect yourself without even knowing why. I didn't realize how much I was numbing or how deep those old wounds were woven into my everyday life. Eventually, my marriage ended. It wasn't some explosive thing. It was just years of misalignment and dysfunction that finally reached a breaking point. And once it was over, I thought I was stepping into the next chapter of my life. I had no idea how vulnerable I really was after. I didn't understand that then that unhealed trauma has a way of pulling you towards familiar patterns, even when you don't recognize them as familiar. I didn't understand that you could be fully grown and fully functioning and fully aware on the surface and still have parts of you running on the instincts that you developed in survival. So after my divorce and when I found myself single again, I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't expecting anything, but I crossed paths with someone who felt familiar in ways that I couldn't even name at the time, but it was familiar in the ways that slip under the radar because they don't look dangerous. It's familiar in the ways that remind your body of something your mind has forgotten. And that's where the next part of the story begins. Because when I met him, it didn't feel like a normal connection. It felt like my soul recognized him before my mind even had time to think. It hit me in a way that felt supernatural, like something the universe placed him in front of me on purpose. I wasn't searching for anybody, but the pull towards him felt impossible to ignore. It was intense from the start. It was deep, magnetic. It felt like magic. It was terrifying in the way only something that feels like destined. He made me feel seen in ways I didn't even know I needed. He asked the right questions. He listened with like a kind of focus that it made me feel chosen. He mirrored my fears and my dreams, my insecurities, my softness. It was vulnerability and love bombing happening at the exact same time. And I didn't have the emotional clarity back then to tell the difference. It felt spiritual, honestly. It was like a soul tie. Like we've known each other in another lifetime. And what I didn't realize was he was reflecting back the parts of me that I had never healed. I didn't realize he was learning me. He was studying me, memorizing the places I'd been hurt so he could slip right into those cracks without me noticing. And I fell hard. I loved a version of him that never actually existed. The connection felt so powerful that I would have honestly taken a bullet for him without hesitation. That was the level of devotion I felt. That's how deep it went. I loved him with a loyalty that should have been holy, but it was being used as a weapon against me. And looking back, it makes sense why I fell so fast. I hadn't healed from anything. My trauma was wide open. I was still hungry for safety and closeness and understanding, and he stepped into that hunger like he had been waiting for it. And I didn't see the danger because the beginning felt like magic. It felt like oxygen after years of holding my breath. It felt like someone finally understood me on a level that nobody ever had before. But familiar doesn't always mean safe. Sometimes familiar is just your nervous system recognizing chaos wrapped in charm. Sometimes familiar is just an unhealed trauma answering someone else's pain. And that's what it was. A connection so intoxicating it made me ignore every instinct I had left. A connection so powerful that it made me trust a fantasy over my own reality. A connection that was so consuming it blinded me to the truth of who he really was. Because in the beginning, he was everything. Everything that I thought I had been missing. Everything I didn't know how to give myself, and everything I believed was finally mine. And I didn't know that loving someone that deeply could be the very thing that could end up breaking me in ways I never saw coming. The unraveling, it was quiet at first, but the cruelty, it was like so cruel. That was not quiet. Once he knew I was fully in, and he knew how deeply I loved him, and once he recognized I would choose him over myself every single time, something in him changed. The softness disappeared, the sweetness faded, the love faded, and the anger came forward. It didn't explode all at once. It dripped out slowly. It was disguised as frustration or stress or just him having a bad day or blaming me and manipulating it to be my fault. But the words that he used when he was angry, they cut deeper than anything that I have ever been hit with in my entire life. There was this strength to them It was like he knew exactly where to aim because I had trusted him with my entire being. He could look me in the eye and say things that broke me from the inside out. He would say that I was worthless, I was washed up, a burden, a crazy person, a dumb cunt. He told me to kill myself multiple times, and the worst part is how easily he would say it. Like my existence was an inconvenience, like my pain was entertainment to him, like my life just meant nothing. Those words didn't just hurt me. They're carved in places I didn't even know were possible to get to. Because when somebody you love with your whole heart, your entire being, tells you things like that, it hits different. It bruises itself pretty deep. It becomes a voice that you start fighting long after they're gone. And what made it even worse and harder is he would act like nothing happened right after he said those things. Like he didn't just tear through me with the kind of rage that leaves a bruise you can't physically see. And if I tried bringing it up later, he would make me feel stupid for caring, or would make me feel dramatic for being hurt, or he would make me feel like I misunderstood everything. The cruelty, it never came with remorse anymore. There was no reflection or apology, just a switch in tone that could turn the man I loved into someone who looked at me like I was a disposal. Someone who used my insecurities like weapons. He used his voice like a weapon. And I took it because I still believed that the connection we started with was real. I still believed the love I felt was mutual. I still believed I could bring him back to the version of him that loved me so intensely in the beginning. But every time he got angry, something inside me collapsed a little bit more. His words, they chipped away at me until I couldn't even tell where his opinions ended and my self-worth began. I found myself apologizing for things I didn't do, begging for reassurance or over-explaining every feeling, trying to earn a peace that never lasted longer than a few hours. He could flip between tenderness and cruelty so fast that my nervous system couldn't even keep up anymore. I was constantly bracing for impact, even on calm days. Listening for the shift in his breathing, watching his face for clues about what mood he would be in, trying to predict him down to the second just to stay one step ahead of the next blow. That's what it's like living with emotional abuse. It's not always screaming, it's the quiet dread, the walking on eggshells that never end, the way your body learns to flinch even when his hand never touches you, the way his voice can undo you faster than any physical hit ever could. And the worst part was how quickly I forgot my own truth. I stopped trusting my reactions. I stopped trusting my memories, and I stopped trusting the tiny voice inside me that whispered, "This isn't love." I was too deep. I was too attached, too trauma bonded, too hopeful for the version of him that never fucking existed. His anger did not just scare me. It trained me. It conditioned me to twist myself into someone that wouldn't upset him, someone that would not trigger his disappointment or make him angry, I started disappearing to keep the peace. And once you start disappearing, it doesn't take long before you realize that you just don't recognize yourself anymore. My voice got quieter, my opinions got softer, my boundaries dissolved, my needs turned into fear. I didn't speak out loud. I thought I was protecting the relationship. I thought I was protecting us, but really I was protecting myself from him. From the next wave of anger, the next sentence that would gut me, from the next night that would leave me curled up in a version of myself I just did not even recognize. This was the point where the emotional abuse stopped being subtle and it became a pattern, a cycle, a rhythm my body learned long before my mind admitted it was even happening. Living through something like this, it doesn't just break your heart. It doesn't just hurt your feelings. It doesn't just leave you sad and confused. It changes your entire wiring. People love to say, just leave or just move on, just heal already, as if trauma is something you could just put down once the relationship is over. But the reality is this. When you live in survival mode for months or years, your nervous system learns it. It memorizes the danger. It memorizes the pattern. It memorizes the fear even when the person is gone. Your body becomes the battlefield long after the war is over. This kind of trauma teaches your system to stay alert all the time. Not because you want to be alert, but because your body does not feel safe enough to let you relax. Your brain keeps looking for threats that are no longer there. Your heart keeps racing over things that are harmless, and your breath gets shallow even in peaceful rooms. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between memory and danger, so it reacts to both. That's why survivors flinch at certain tones or certain silences. They just feel like storms. Why footsteps, phone notifications, slammed doors, or sudden shifts in someone's voice can make your heart jump before your mind even knows what's happening. Your body remembers what your mind survived. Your body responds to danger when the danger's gone, and your body keeps trying to save you even when you're finally safe. And this is not something you can think your way out of. This is biology. This is the nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do under pressure that should have never existed in the first place. Chronic trauma also changes the way you see yourself. It eats away at your confidence. It rewires your ability to trust your instincts. It makes you second guess everything. Everything you feel, everything you need, everything you deserve. You stop trusting your own mind because someone spent years teaching you not to. This is why survivors struggle with self-worth long after the abuse ends. It's not weakness. It's not drama. It's not holding on to the past. It's the aftermath of being emotionally dismantled piece by piece. And the truth is, trauma changes the way you love. It changes the way you connect. It changes the way you show up in relationships because your body still is trying to protect you from what already happened. Some survivors avoid closeness. Some fall into the wrong kind of closeness. Some crave intensely because it feels familiar. Some shut down because safety feels so foreign. None of this is character. None of this is personality. None of this is brokenness. It's the nervous system trying to navigate a world you no longer feel calibrated for. Living through chronic trauma, it's not just emotional, it's physical. It changes your brain, it changes your body, it changes the way you experience the entire world. And the fight to heal is not about forgetting. It's about teaching your system that it's finally allowed to relax. It's about finding your breath again. It's about reminding your body that danger is not the default. That peace is possible. That safety exists. That you deserve to live in a life that does not require you to brace for impact every second. This is why recovery, it's not linear. It's why healing takes time and why survivors are fucking exhausted. And this is why you can't rush someone out of trauma, because when something rewires your nervous system, healing, it's not just emotional, it's a full body recalibration. And what so many people who haven't experienced trauma don't understand, you don't walk away from the abuse and return to the person you were before. You walk away as someone who has rebuilt themselves from the inside out. And that rebuilding is the real fight. The one nobody sees that. Nobody claps for. It takes everything that you have and one breath at a time to rebuild. And here's the truth. Healing from this kind of trauma, it's not some beautiful rise from the ashes moment. It's not a straight line. It's not a triumph montage where you suddenly reclaim your power and everything falls into place. It's not. It's clumsy. It's lonely. It's fucking exhausting in ways that feels bone deep. And it requires a level of honesty with yourself that most people just never understand. There were days that I thought I was finally moving forward, only to get hit with a memory that knocked the wind out of me. There were weeks where I felt so strong, then one sound or tone and one unexpected flashback of danger, it dragged me right back into survival mode. And I used to get so angry with myself for that. I used to think I was failing at healing because I still reacted like someone who had lived through hell. But the truth is, those reactions are proof of how hard I fought to survive. They were proof of how deeply my trauma went, and proof that my body was still trying to protect me even when I didn't need protecting anymore. Healing was not a moment. It's 1,000 tiny choices, and it still is. It was breathing through flashbacks instead of running from them. It was choosing honesty over numbness and sitting with the feelings instead of hiding from them. It was letting myself acknowledge what really happened without softening it or sugarcoating it for somebody else's comfort. It was refusing to gaslight myself anymore. And slowly, breath by breath, my system, it started to shift. Not perfectly, not quickly, but gradually. I started noticing when my body tensed, and I started understanding which reactions belong to the past and which belong to the present. I started giving myself grace for the days my nervous system hijacked everything. I stopped expecting myself to be the girl I was before the trauma, because she's gone.
And honestly, she needed to be. Because the woman I became after is someone who learned how to breathe again without asking permission. Someone who learned how to trust her own voice again. Someone who stopped shrinking to make other people comfortable. Someone who finally understood that survival was not something to be ashamed of. It's evidence of strength I didn't even know I had. And there's the part I need to clarify, and I need to say this clearly. What happened to me was not my fault. What happened to you was not your fault. The way your nervous system reacts now is not your fault. The way you freeze or shut down or panic is not your fault. None of the ways you learn to survive are failures. They're your body you are adapting. They're proof that you did what you had to do to stay alive in situations that you should have never have been in. You do not owe anyone a perfect recovery. You do not owe anyone a tidy ending. You do not owe anyone a version of yourself that makes your trauma easier for them to digest. Your only job is to keep breathing, to keep choosing yourself, to keep unlearning the lies that you are conditioned to believe about your worth, and to understand that healing is not about becoming who you were before. It's about becoming someone who finally feels safe in their own body. Someone who can breathe freely again. Someone who does not confuse chaos with love anymore. Someone who knows peace is not boring. Peace is oxygen. If you're listening to this and you see yourself in any part of my story, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You are not dramatic. You are not weak. You are not too much. You are someone who survived something that could have destroyed you. And you are still here, still breathing, still trying, still fighting for a life that feels like yours. And that fight matters. Your healing matters. Your fucking existence matters. And even on the days that you feel like you're drowning, even on the days that your past feels louder than your present, even on the days that you cannot see your own strength, there is something inside of you still choosing to breathe. That's not an accident. That is not small. That is resilience in its rawest form. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for fighting for yourself in a world that does not always understand what it takes to survive the silent poison of abuse. Take a breath. You earned it.